Jasmine Crockett stood backstage at the CNN town hall, her navy blue pantsuit perfectly pressed, heart racing as she heard Kash Patel's voice booming through the speakers. The former Trump Defense Department official was already on stage, confidently declaring, "Crockett is just another progressive with zero understanding of how national security works." The audience gasped at his boldness, a mix of cheers and boos filling the air. Through the curtain, Crockett could see Patel, in his crisp gray suit, gesturing dramatically to the crowd. His smirk was unmistakable as he added, "She's all talk." No substance, typical for someone who's never handled classified documents. The crowd grew louder, with Patel's supporters clapping enthusiastically. What Patel didn't know was that Crockett had brought something unexpected, evidence that would completely flip his narrative. As the first-term Congresswoman from Texas gripped her folder tightly, her eyes narrowed with determination. This wasn't just another political debate. This was her moment to expose Patel on national television. When the host announced, "And now joining us is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett," she took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight, ready to turn this ambush into Patel's worst nightmare. Before we dive deeper into this shocking confrontation, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on the most explosive political showdowns. Comment where you're watching from. The CNN studio lights blazed as Kash Patel commanded the stage like he owned it. The former Defense Department Chief of Staff under Trump stood with the confidence of someone accustomed to power, his polished appearance matching his carefully rehearsed talking points. The moderator, Chris Wallace, introduced him as one of the most influential figures in the previous administration's national security team. Patel nodded appreciatively, soaking in the scattered applause from conservative audience members. His reputation preceded him, loyal Trump ally, outspoken critic of the Biden administration, and frequent commentator who never shied away from confrontation. "I'm here to talk facts," Patel began, his voice carrying the authority he'd cultivated during his time at the Pentagon. "Our national security has been compromised under this administration, and representatives like Jasmine Crockett are part of the problem. They're focused on performative politics while our enemies grow stronger." The conservative section of the audience nodded in agreement, with a few shouts of, "Tell it like it is, Kash," echoing through the studio. "Congresswoman Crockett is a prime example," Patel continued, pointing toward the side stage where she would soon emerge. "First-term representative who spends more time on social media than understanding basic national security protocols. She's criticized our intelligence community without ever having handled a classified document. It's easy to throw stones when you've never been in the arena." His supporters clapped enthusiastically, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the room clearly divided. Chris Wallace attempted to regain control. "Strong words, Mr. Patel. Let's bring out Congresswoman Crockett to respond." The spotlight shifted to the side of the stage as Jasmine Crockett emerged. At 42, the freshman Congresswoman from Texas carried herself with the confident poise developed during her years as a civil rights attorney. Her navy blue pantsuit was complemented by a statement necklace, her expression calm but determined. Unlike Patel, who had years in Washington's inner circles, Crockett represented a newer generation of progressive lawmakers. Elected in 2022, she had quickly established herself as a powerful voice on the House Judiciary Committee, known for her sharp legal mind and unwillingness to back down from a fight. As she took her seat across from Patel, the contrast was striking. His establishment confidence versus her fresh determination. Wallace introduced her as a rising star in the Democratic Party and member of the House Judiciary Committee who has been outspoken on issues of government transparency. "Thank you for having me," Crockett said, her voice steady as she placed a folder on the table beside her. "I've been listening to Mr. Patel's characterizations, and I'm looking forward to setting the record straight." Behind the scenes, Crockett's aide slipped a note to the production team. "Be ready to display Exhibit A when signaled." On the note was information about documents that would change everything about this confrontation. The stakes were clear to everyone watching. This wasn't just about two political figures debating policy. This was about credibility, authenticity, and who truly understood the responsibilities of handling national security. For Patel, it was about maintaining his reputation as a trusted insider. For Crockett, it was about proving that new voices deserved respect, especially when armed with facts. What Patel didn't know was that Crockett hadn't come empty-handed. The folder beside her contained information that could dismantle his entire argument and his credibility in seconds. The tension in the studio thickened as Chris Wallace turned to Jasmine Crockett. "Congresswoman, Mr. Patel has essentially questioned your qualifications to discuss national security matters. How do you respond?" Crockett adjusted her microphone, her expression calm but determined. "First, let me thank Mr. Patel for his service. It's always valuable to hear from former officials, especially those who had such unique experiences in the previous administration." Her slight pause on unique didn't go unnoticed, drawing nervous laughter from the audience. Patel's smile tightened at the edges. "However," she continued, "I find it interesting that Mr. Patel questions my qualifications when my role on the Judiciary Committee specifically requires oversight of national security matters. That's literally part of my job description as a member of Congress." Patel leaned forward, interrupting her. "Committee assignments don't equal expertise, Congresswoman. I've actually handled top-secret information. I've been in the room where decisions affecting global security were made. With all due respect, reading briefings isn't the same as creating them." The interruption drew scattered applause from his supporters. Wallace attempted to intervene, but Patel continued. "The American people deserve representatives who understand the serious nature of these matters, not politicians who use security issues for talking points on CNN." His voice grew louder, more confident. "When was the last time you were briefed on a level 1 security threat? Have you ever had to make decisions about classified intelligence that could affect American lives?" The questions came rapid-fire, clearly designed to overwhelm Crockett and paint her as inexperienced. His supporters in the audience nodded approvingly, while others watched uncomfortably as Patel continued his barrage. "This administration and its defenders like Congresswoman Crockett have weakened our standing globally. Our adversaries are emboldened because they know our leadership lacks resolve. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines when you've never been in the game," Wallace finally managed to interject. "Mr. Patel, let's allow the Congresswoman to respond." Crockett remained composed, though her eyes had narrowed slightly during Patel's monologue. "Thank you, Chris. Mr. Patel seems very concerned about handling classified information properly, which I find interesting given his history." She glanced down at her folder, but didn't open it yet. "Before I address that specifically, I want to remind everyone that congressional oversight of intelligence and security matters is a constitutional responsibility. It's not sitting on the sidelines. It's doing the job the American people elected me to do." Patel scoffed visibly, shaking his head in dismissal. This reaction didn't go unnoticed by the audience or by Wallace, who raised an eyebrow. "Furthermore," Crockett continued, "my background as a civil rights attorney taught me the importance of both security and proper procedure. National security and constitutional rights aren't opposing forces. They must coexist in a functioning democracy." "Pretty words," Patel interjected again, his tone increasingly condescending. "But again, no substance behind them. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Performative politics instead of real experience." The audience's reaction was mixed, some cheering Patel's forceful approach, others beginning to bristle at his repeated interruptions. Wallace turned to Patel. "Mr. Patel, you've had your say. Please allow the Congresswoman to finish her point." Patel gestured in mock deference, the smirk never leaving his face. "By all means. I'm just hoping we might eventually get to some substance." The camera caught Crockett's expression. Not anger, but something closer to satisfaction, as if Patel was walking directly into a trap she had set. She continued, her voice measured. "Since Mr. Patel is so concerned about the proper handling of sensitive information, perhaps we should discuss his own record in this area." Her hand moved toward the folder beside her. Because while he questions my qualifications, there are some serious questions about his own conduct that the American people deserve answers to. The atmosphere in the studio shifted perceptibly. Patel's expression flickered momentarily as Crockett opened her folder and removed several documents. The cameraman zoomed in on the papers, which appeared to be official records with government letterheads. Mr. Patel, are you familiar with the Inspector General's report dated June 2022 regarding unauthorized disclosures of classified information during the transition period? Crockett asked, her tone now sharper, more prosecutorial. For the first time, Patel hesitated, the confidence in his expression wavering. I'm familiar with many reports, Congresswoman. You'll need to be more specific. Crockett nodded to the production team, and a document appeared on the large screen behind them, an official-looking report with certain sections highlighted. The audience murmured as they tried to read the text. Page 47, paragraph 3, Crockett said calmly. It specifically names you, Mr. Patel, in connection with what the IG called troubling breaches of established security protocols. Not my words, the Inspector General's. The studio fell completely silent. Even Wallace seemed caught off guard by this turn of events. Patel's face had hardened, his earlier smirk replaced by a tight-lipped expression. That report is taken completely out of context, he finally responded, his voice lacking its previous bombast. And portions of it have been disputed by multiple officials. Crockett nodded. I thought you might say that. That's why I brought the follow-up assessment as well. She pulled out another document. This one's from September 2023, reaffirming the original findings and noting that the disputed portions didn't include the sections pertaining to your actions. The temperature in the room seemed to rise. Patel's supporters had grown quiet while others in the audience leaned forward, sensing they were witnessing something unexpected. This is a political hit job, Patel said, his voice rising again. Typical of the left, to try to distract from their own failures by dredging up debunked accusations. Crockett remained unfazed. These are official government documents, Mr. Patel. If they've been debunked, I'd be very interested to see that evidence. She turned to face the audience directly. What we have here is a clear case of projection. Mr. Patel questions my qualifications, while his own record shows precisely the kind of mishandling of sensitive information that he accuses others of. The studio erupted, half the audience applauding. Crockett's methodical takedown, the other half shouting in Patel's defense. Wallace struggled to restore order as the confrontation reached new levels of intensity. Patel's face had flushed red, his composure cracking visibly as he realized Crockett had come armed with far more than talking points. He'd expected an easy target, a freshman congresswoman he could dismiss. Instead, he found himself on the defensive, with his own record now under the spotlight, and Crockett wasn't finished, not even close. As Wallace finally managed to quiet the audience, she reached for yet another document in her folder. There's more we should discuss, Mr. Patel, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Shall we talk about the December testimony, where you appeared to contradict your own previous statements about security clearances? The look on Patel's face made it clear. What had started as his attempt to discredit Crockett was rapidly becoming his own worst nightmare. The studio had fallen into a stunned silence. The confident, almost cocky demeanor that Kash Patel had displayed earlier had evaporated. He sat rigidly in his chair, eyes darting between Crockett, Wallace, and the damning documents displayed on the screen behind them. Let's be very clear about what we're seeing here, Crockett continued, her voice steady and authoritative. She stood up, taking command of the stage in a way that shifted the entire power dynamic of the confrontation. Mr. Patel began this segment questioning my qualifications to discuss national security, suggesting I lack the experience to handle sensitive information. She gestured to the screen, where the Inspector General's report remained displayed. Yet, these official documents show that Mr. Patel himself was cited for what the report calls significant deviations from established security protocols during his time at the Department of Defense. Wallace, regaining his professional composure, turned to Patel. Mr. Patel, Would you like to respond to these allegations? Patel straightened his tie, visibly trying to regain control of the situation. What Congresswoman Crockett is doing is exactly what I was talking about, taking isolated incidents out of context to score political points. That report was politically motivated, and politically motivated? Crockett interjected, her eyebrow raised. The Inspector General who authored this report was appointed by President Trump, the same president you served. Are you suggesting your own administration's appointees were conspiring against you? The question hung in the air as Patel struggled to formulate a response. The audience watched intently, many recording on their phones, aware they were witnessing a pivotal moment. Let me continue, Crockett said, not waiting for Patel's answer. She nodded to the production team, and the screen changed to display a new document, a transcript of congressional testimony. This is from your testimony before the House Oversight Committee on December 13, 2021. She read aloud. I never shared any classified information outside of authorized channels. That was your statement under oath. She looked directly at Patel. Yet the IG report specifically details 3 incidents where you did exactly that. Would you like to explain the discrepancy? Patel's face flushed deeper. This is absurd. You're cherry-picking statements and deliberately misrepresenting. I'm quoting you directly, Crockett interrupted, her voice remaining calm but firm. Your words, Mr. Patel, under oath. The contrast between them couldn't have been more stark. Crockett standing confidently with evidence in hand, Patel becoming increasingly defensive and agitated. The audience sensed the shift, with even some of Patel's initial supporters looking uncomfortable. But the most interesting part, Crockett continued, pulling out yet another document, is what happened after these incidents were reported. She signaled again, and the screen displayed what appeared to be an email chain with several names redacted. These communications show that after being notified of security protocol violations, you attempted to have the individuals who reported these violations reassigned to different departments. Some might call that retaliation, Mr. Patel. Gasps rippled through the audience. Wallace leaned forward, clearly as surprised by these revelations as everyone else. That is a complete fabrication, Patel responded, his voice rising. Those staffing decisions were made for operational reasons that had nothing to do with any reports. Crockett nodded thoughtfully. Interesting, because I also have here. She produced another document, the sworn affidavit of James Keller, former Deputy Director of Operations, stating that you explicitly told him, and I quote, "We need to clean house of anyone who doesn't understand how things work now." She looked up. This conversation allegedly took place 3 days after the first security violation was reported. The studio had fallen completely silent. Even Wallace seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Patel's supporters, who had been vocal at the beginning of the segment, were now quiet, many shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This is character assassination, Patel finally sputtered, his composure fully cracking. You come on national television with these selectively edited documents and try to— They're not edited, Mr. Patel, Crockett said, her voice firm but not unkind. They're the official record, and they tell a very different story than the one you've been sharing about who is and isn't qualified to handle national security matters. She turned to face the audience directly, her expression serious. Let me be clear. I'm not bringing this up to score political points. I'm bringing it up because national security is too important for hypocrisy. When Mr. Patel questions my qualifications, while his own record shows these issues, the American people deserve to know that. The audience erupted in applause, not just from her supporters, but from across the studio. It was the response of people who recognized authenticity cutting through performative politics. Wallace, regaining control, turned to Patel. Mr. Patel, would you like to address these specific allegations about retaliating against staff who reported security violations? Patel's face had gone from red to ashen. He adjusted his microphone, clearly buying time to collect himself. These are complex matters that can't be reduced to sound bites. National security operations involve nuanced decisions that might look questionable to outsiders without the full context. It was a non-answer, and everyone knew it. The audience's reaction made that clear, with several audible scoffs. Crockett saw her opening and delivered the final blow. You know what, Mr. Patel? I actually agree with you about one thing. National security is nuanced and complex. That's why it requires integrity, transparency, and accountability. It requires leaders who follow the rules they expect others to follow. She gathered her documents, straightening them into a neat stack. So, when you question whether I'm qualified to discuss these matters, perhaps you should consider whether someone with documented issues following security protocols should be the one casting those stones. The audience erupted again, many rising to their feet. The camera panned across faces showing shock, admiration, and the unique energy of witnessing something truly unexpected on live television. Patel sat frozen, the confident smirk long gone, replaced by the tight expression of someone who knew they'd been outplayed on national television. What had begun as his attempt to diminish a freshman congresswoman had transformed into his own public reckoning. Wallace, professional as ever, attempted to give Patel one final chance. Mr. Patel, you have 30 seconds for a final response. Patel straightened his jacket, visibly trying to salvage what remained of his dignity. The American people are smart enough to see through political theater. My record of service speaks for itself, and I stand by it completely. What the Congresswoman fails to mention is the countless security threats that were neutralized under our watch, the reforms we implemented, and your time is up, Mr. Patel, Wallace interjected, turning to Crockett. Congresswoman, your final. 30 seconds. Crockett nodded, her expression solemn. I didn't come here to attack Mr. Patel personally. I came to defend the principle that oversight matters, that following security protocols matters, regardless of political affiliation. When we make these issues partisan, America loses. So yes, I'll continue to ask tough questions about national security, not because I lack experience, but because that's exactly what the American people elected me to do. The applause was immediate and thunderous. Even Wallace couldn't help but look impressed. As the camera pulled back to a wide shot of the studio, the visual told the story. Crockett standing tall, documents in hand, completely in command. Patel slumped slightly in his chair, the embodiment of a man who had walked into a fight severely, underestimating his opponent. The producer signaled for a commercial break, but not before capturing one final shot of the audience, many on their feet, phones raised high, capturing a moment they knew would be replayed millions of times in the 80 hours to come. As the CNN town hall cut to commercial, the studio buzzed with electricity. Audience members rushed to post clips online, their fingers flying across phone screens to share what they'd just witnessed. Production assistants hurried about, some looking stunned at the unexpected turn the segment had taken. None of them had anticipated that the confrontation between Kash Patel and Jasmine Crockett would become an instant viral moment. Patel rose quickly from his seat, ignoring the outstretched hand of a producer who attempted to adjust his microphone. His face remained flushed, jaw tight as he walked briskly backstage, surrounded immediately by his team. "Get me on the phone with Greg at Fox," he could be heard muttering. "We need to get ahead of this narrative immediately." Meanwhile, Crockett remained in her seat, calmly accepting a bottle of water from an aide. Unlike Patel's tense exit, she appeared composed, even slightly surprised by the audience's overwhelming reaction. Chris Wallace leaned over during the break. "Congresswoman, that was unexpected," he said, a rare break from his typically neutral demeanor. "Sometimes the truth is," Crockett replied simply. Outside the studio walls, social media was already exploding. Within 5 minutes of the exchange, Jarn Crockett receipts was trending nationwide, with clip after clip of the confrontation flooding Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. The moment when Crockett revealed the Inspector General's report was being shared at a rate that threatened to crash some platforms' video services. Jasmine Crockett just ended Kash Patel's whole career live on CNN, read one viral tweet with over 50,000 likes in the first 10 minutes. Another popular post featured a split screen of Patel's confident smirk at the beginning of the segment, contrasted with his ashen expression by the end, captioned simply, "How it started versus how it ended." Conservative accounts scrambled to defend Patel, claiming Crockett had ambushed him with selective evidence and gotcha politics. But even among right-leaning viewers, there was a grudging acknowledgement that Patel had been outmaneuvered. "Patel walked into that one," admitted a prominent conservative commentator. "Never underestimate your opponent. Basic strategy." As the commercial break ended, Wallace welcomed viewers back with the understated acknowledgement that "we've certainly had an illuminating discussion on national security credentials." The camera panned to show Patel had returned to his seat, though his body language had completely transformed. Gone was the relaxed confidence, replaced by rigid posture and a fixed stare. "Before we move to audience questions," Wallace continued, "I want to give Mr. Patel an opportunity to address the documents Congresswoman Crockett presented regarding security protocols." Patel cleared his throat, his media training kicking in as he attempted to regain control. What we saw here was a classic Washington gotcha moment. The Congresswoman brought selectively edited documents without providing full context. The matters referenced were administrative in nature and were resolved through proper channels. This is exactly the kind of political theater that Americans are tired of. His voice had steadied, but the damage was done. The audience's reaction was tepid at best, with several visible eye rolls as he attempted to dismiss the evidence. Crockett didn't interrupt, allowing Patel to finish before responding. "With respect, Mr. Patel, these documents are complete and unedited. They're available through FOIA requests, which is how my office obtained them. They aren't classified. They're the public record. And the American people deserve to know the truth, especially from those who appoint themselves as arbiters of who is and isn't qualified to discuss national security." The first audience question came from a middle-aged woman who identified herself as a registered independent. "Mr. Patel, given what we've just learned, do you still stand by your earlier statement that Congresswoman Crockett lacks the qualifications to discuss national security matters?" The question hung in the air as cameras captured Patel's expression, a mix of anger and the dawning realization that this appearance had spiraled far beyond his control. His response was clipped. "My point was and remains that having theoretical knowledge is different from operational experience. Everything else is a distraction." As the town hall continued, the contrasting styles became even more apparent. Patel grew increasingly defensive, his answers shorter and more aggressive. Crockett, meanwhile, expanded beyond the documents, speaking thoughtfully about the balance between security and accountability in a democratic system. By the time the hour-long segment concluded, the narrative had completely flipped. What was intended as Patel's opportunity to position himself as a security expert and diminish a progressive congresswoman had instead become Crockett's breakthrough moment on the national stage. Outside the studio, the impact continued to ripple outward. Major news outlets rushed to prepare analyses of the confrontation, with headlines appearing within the hour. Crockett's receipts. Congresswoman comes armed with evidence in stunning exchange with former Trump official, Washington Post. From prosecutor to Congresswoman, how Jasmine Crockett's legal background led to Kash Patel's televised reckoning, Politico. Patel faces backlash. After confrontation with Crockett reveals security protocol questions, Reuters, even Fox News couldn't ignore the story, though their framing attempted to soften the blow. Patel, ambushed with selective documents in CNN appearance, calls out political theater. Behind the scenes, the political calculus was already shifting. Democratic strategists who had previously viewed Crockett as a promising but junior member of Congress were reassessing her potential. Text messages flew between campaign offices. "Did you see Crockett on CNN? We need to get her to headline the fundraiser next month." Republican operatives were similarly frantically messaging. Patel walked into a buzzsaw. Who prepped him? This is going to be playing on loop through the weekend. The viral moment extended beyond political circles. By evening, late-night comedy writers were frantically incorporating the confrontation into their monologues. Kash Patel learned an important lesson today, one host would joke that night. When you come at the Congresswoman, you better not miss, and maybe check if she has a folder first. In her hotel room that night, Crockett's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. Congratulatory messages poured in from colleagues, constituents, and even a few celebrities who had shared the clip. Her social media followers had exploded, with her account gaining over 200,000 new followers in just hours. One text message stood out, from the Democratic House leadership. "Impressive work today. Let's talk about your committee assignments when you're back in D.C." For Patel, the aftermath was considerably less positive. Conservative outlets that had previously featured him regularly suddenly seemed less enthusiastic about booking him. His phone, too, buzzed with messages, but many were from allies asking variations of what happened and offering unsolicited advice on damage control strategies. A week later, the confrontation had taken on a life of its own in political culture. Bringing receipts became shorthand for coming prepared with evidence to back up claims. A new political meme format emerged. Kash Patel thought he was facing easy opponent, but got Jasmine Crockett with documents. T-shirts appeared online, with simply, "Check the documents," printed across the chest. An instant inside joke for those who had watched the confrontation unfold. For everyday Americans, the exchange resonated beyond partisan politics. It spoke to the fundamental satisfaction of seeing preparation triumph over bluster, of substance defeating style. In workplaces across the country, people reference the confrontation when talking about being ready for meetings or presentations. Don't Patel this, bring your Crockett energy. The most significant impact, however, was on the principals themselves. For Crockett, the confrontation transformed her national profile overnight. What might have taken years of gradual exposure happened in one electric hour on CNN. She was no longer just a promising freshman representative, but a demonstrated force to be reckoned with, someone who did her homework and couldn't be intimidated, even by Washington veterans. For Patel, the road to reputation recovery would be much longer. The confrontation had not only undermined his carefully cultivated image as a national security expert, but had raised genuine questions about his record that would follow him to future appearances, job opportunities, and political ambitions. Perhaps, most importantly, the confrontation served as a powerful reminder about political discourse in America. In an era often defined by talking points and personal attacks, Crockett had demonstrated the enduring power of simply coming prepared with facts. It wasn't flashy rhetoric or personal insults that had shifted the power dynamic. It was documented evidence presented clearly and confidently. 3 months later, when Patel was asked about the confrontation in another interview, he attempted to dismiss it. Ancient history, politically speaking. But the clip continued to resurface whenever he made definitive statements about security matters. The internet, it seemed, had a longer memory than political strategists might hope. As for Crockett, she leveraged her new national platform not for personal gain, but to focus attention on her legislative priorities, voting rights, criminal justice reform, and yes, government accountability. When asked about the confrontation that had catapulted her to broader recognition, she typically responded with characteristic directness. It wasn't about him or me. It was about making sure the American people get the truth. That's the job. Bringing receipts. The lesson for American politics was clear, though not everyone would heed it. In an age of instant fact-checking and viral moments, authenticity and preparation trump bluster and credentials. Crockett hadn't just won a political exchange. She'd provided a template for how substance could still prevail in an era often dominated by style. And somewhere in America, in countless classrooms, community meetings, and workplace presentations, people opened folders containing their research and evidence, channeling a bit of that same energy, ready to speak truth with the receipts to back it up. This wasn't just the story of a political confrontation. It was a reminder of what political discourse could and should be: informed, evidence-based, and accountable to the truth. Don't miss our next breakdown of Washington's most explosive confrontations. Hit subscribe now and turn on notifications, so you never miss these crucial political moments as they happen. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Crockett's takedown. Was it the most prepared political response you've ever seen? See you in our next video.